Well, hello, friends. Thank you for joining me on this Tuesday edition of the Daily Connection. It's time that we get into the Word so that the Word gets into us. Today's reading may seem unusual for several reasons. Number one, we're going to stay in one book. We're not trying to go from this book and correspond it to this book to this book. It's teachings that, to some degree, line up with where Luke's taking us in the text. And then also, we're not trying to cover a whole lot of ground. It's almost like you get a chance to breathe. But one thing's for sure, the truths that are presented here are pretty profound because we have several different warnings being issued by Jesus. Warnings regarding hypocrisy, warnings regarding greed, a couple other warnings in here. So it's definitely a set of verses that we need to take our time, make sure we understand them correctly, and then we go about trying to apply them diligently, especially when the verses that I want to deal with. Because I want to look at chapter 12, verse 13, 14, and 15, and then the corresponding parable that goes with that. Because in our culture today, a very much a consumer-driven culture, we're bombarded with advertisement, constantly trying to be, coerced into or manipulated into buying this thing or buying that thing, and are convinced that we need to have more wealth, we need to have more possessions, all these different things that supposedly bring about joy and happiness in this life. But Jesus issues a warning against putting too much expectation or desiring too much out of earthly possessions. So look with me in Luke chapter 12, starting verse 13. Someone from the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." "Friend," he said to him, "who appointed me a judge or an arbiter over you?" He then told them, "Watch out and be on guard against all greed, because one's life is not in the abundance of his possessions." All right, so there it is. There's the warning. Here comes the urgent plea. "Hey, teacher, tell my brother this isn't right what he's doing. We're supposed to divide these things fairly." Jesus says, you're consumed by, a misguided desire and passion, because ultimately your life does not exist within these things. It's not the summation of your life. But notice what he says there in verse 15. Watch out. Be on guard. He's already said that multiple times regarding hypocrisy, regarding the leaven of the Pharisees in the previous verses back in chapter 11. Watch out. Be on guard. This idea that, hey, this is dangerous. This could really not go well for you if you're not careful with what's happening here. And so he says, watch out for, or be on guard against all greed. All greed. So whether it's greed related to money, or greed related to possessions, or greed related to power, he's basically saying anything in excess that does not have a kingdom focus and a kingdom purpose is dangerous and destructive. He said, because one's life is not in the abundance of his possessions. And yet we're told today, time and time again, that life is defined by possessions. The more toys you have, the more fun you can have. The more money you have, the more toys you can have. It's that dangerous cycle, the almost unending cycle. It's a chain reaction, if you will, where they're all linked together. And sadly, those are weak links because they always lead us to unfulfillment, dissatisfaction. And then the end goal, Jesus said, is destruction, because he tells a parable. Look at verse 16. Then he told them a parable. A rich man's land was very productive. He thought to himself, what should I do since I don't have anywhere to store my crops? I'll do this. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones and store all my grain and my goods there. Then I'll say to myself, you have many goods stored up for many years. Take it easy, eat, drink, and enjoy yourself. But God said to him, you fool, this very night your life is demanded of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be? That's how it is with the one who stores up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. So he's basically saying, you fool, the abundance and the blessing that came to you was not just for your enjoyment and for your hoarding. They would have been for a kingdom purpose to meet the needs of others, to ensure that everyone had something instead of you hoarding everything. And because of that, you're not even going to get the benefit because your life is going to be demanded of you. It's the idea that, hey, when we have our needs met, there's a difference between needs and greeds. We all have needs. We need water. We need sleep. We need food. Two of those typically require some sort of a monetary source, food and water. And the thing is, when we have what we need, that should then satisfy us. Now, what does he mean? The life is more, your life is not in the abundance of your possessions. He's basically saying this: God will supply our need But when we get consumed with the things of this world, we then transition from need into greed. And when that's the case, we begin to desire from the possessions and demand of the possessions a joy and a satisfaction, a sense of purpose that only God can bring us, only being living in the purpose and the power of the kingdom can bring to us. And yet it's a vicious cycle because it's unending. Because once this possession no longer satisfies, we go about looking for this possession. It's kind of like the old joke. Bigger boys want bigger toys. When we're little, we want Tonka toys. When we get older, we want trucks. We want different types of construction apparatuses and all, different things like machinery. I mean, all these things. And yet none of that satisfies. What truly satisfies is a walk with Christ, knowing Him personally and intimately through salvation by grace through faith, and then walking in obedience to His will, constantly seeking to live out His kingdom purpose for our life. So Jesus is warning them. He warned His crowd. He's warning us. Do not let greed become any part of your life. All greed, He says, all greed. Guard against all greed. And so we can't allow a greed for anything to come into our life and supplant the love that should be truly, that we should be truly characterized by our love for God. Well, important lesson. It's one that we have to always learn and be diligent to apply because, like I said, we're constantly bombarded with all sorts of advertisements and commercials saying, hey, buy this, you need this, if you get this, we'll add this. It's a consumer-driven mentality, which is rooted in greed. And we have to guard against that. And one of the ways we guard against that is being so committed in our love for God, so committed in a sacrificial love for others, and so committed to our commission to go out and live sent that we're not so enamored with the things of this world. We are totally and completely fixed on the purpose of God for our life. And you know what, friends? If you're a born-again believer, God's purpose for your life is to make disciples by engaging people in gospel conversations and by coming alongside believers and equipping them to begin to be multipliers as well. So I encourage you today, don't be consumed with the things of this world. Be so focused on your commission in Christ that there's one purpose that drives you today, living sent.